what do you do when someone else is triggered? In other words, how do you handle other people's blockers? That's exactly what we're talking about today on Mindful Manifesting. But before we do that, I'd love to invite you to download your Future Possibilities Workbook at highertrueself.com. Click on the tab that says Freebies. You're going to love it. It's manifesting from just a simple wish list. All right, let's dive into today's podcast. This is Ariana Rollins with Mindful Manifesting, and this is episode 73. I've had several people express an interest in how do you deal with people when they're triggered, when their blockers are activated. So we're going to go into some detail on things that I have found useful. Hopefully you will find it too. So first thing is we need to recognize when we are activated, when we are triggered. So let's begin with the definition of a blocker. It's a pattern. It's a way of coping with a situation that we feel uncomfortable or we're stressed, and they're triggered and we kind of go unconscious. They're out of our conscious control. And another way of saying it, it's an unconscious, self-defeating habit pattern. I know that's a big word, but just think about it is it's an unconscious pattern to get you back into homeostasis and feeling safe, feeling sound, feeling balanced, feeling in control. So is this sounding like possibly blockers could be associated with our ego? Oh yeah, most definitely. In fact, I often reflect back on Ekhardt Tolle's work where he speaks eloquently in The Power of Now about the ego, and then he goes into more detail about an aspect of the ego called a pain body. Now, I've been fascinated with pain bodies because I've been in this work of teaching people how to clear their own blockers. And on my private clients, I work them through blocker clearings, things that they have not been able to resolve themselves that keep tripping them up and creating failures, basically. And one of the things that I've noticed, a pain body is something that is like a supercharged blocker. And this is where the person literally goes deeply unconscious, and they could do or say things that if they were present, they would never do. And I think this is where we experience violent crime. We watch it. Nobody in their right mind would ever take another human's life. Nobody in their right mind. And that's what I'm talking about. A pain body is we're not in our mindfulness. We are not present. We are not conscious. An aspect of our consciousness now has taken charge. I'm not talking about multiple personalities, but maybe I am. That's a whole other conversation. Okay, so if someone you're relating to, maybe it's at work, maybe it's actually in the grocery store. It happened the other day. I was doing my shopping, and all of a sudden I hear this man's voice, and it was loud, and it was aggressive. And I couldn't see, all I heard the voice, but I saw the other person relating to them. And I saw that person backing up, trying to get away. That's wise. If someone's deeply triggered, you need to get out of the situation, not trigger them more, not feed it. And here's the critical thing. If someone has a pain body activated, and I'll describe a little more in a moment what that means, is that your reaction, whatever you do, will feed that pain body. So think about a pain body it's a part of our consciousness that's in deep pain, and that it is energized when you're in suffering, or it's energized when someone else is in suffering and getting upset. So if you've ever had a crucial conversation and you're knee deep in an argument and you're like, whoa, how did it get to this point? We were just having a smooth conversation, and then now, well, that's what we're talking about with the pain body. So it's almost though you're not dealing with the person who's your beloved or your friend. You're dealing with something else. So pain bodies are just expressions of life that did not go well. And it's almost as though the pain body has life of its own and it's trying to protect you. And I mean, some people could say that when they have been in a situation where there's been violence, the other person who's or causing the violence could say, I was just protecting myself, right? And so if you think about pain bodies and blockers in general, they're just a protection mechanism. Really, very, very much like the ego. But the ego is not one thing. The ego has many expressions. It can be triggered in the smallest ways, and it's not a big deal. But then the ego can get triggered in a big way, and we could end up walking out on a perfectly good relationship because now we've gone deeply unconscious, and now we're not even living in the present moment. We're reliving our history, reliving our past, maybe from our first relationship. Okay, so let's get back to what I started with, recognizing your own blockers, recognizing when you're triggered, because if you don't recognize it in yourself, it's going to be really hard to see it in the other person and to be able to be proactive in navigating it in loving, compassionate ways for the highest good of all. So recognizing when you're triggered. Now, I created a little exercise, and anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you're interested, you can reach out to me we've got Facebook, Higher True Self, and ask me, hey, Ariana, I want to get that trigger process awareness, and I will send it to you completely free. All right, so trigger awareness process. I'll tell you real quick how to do it. You can do it on a blank piece of paper. Write down the moments when you lose your cool, when you lose your center, when you get out of homeostasis, when you feel your blood pressure rising, you're getting hot, maybe you've got like butterflies in your belly and you're feeling anxious. You just know you're not operating at your best. You are feeling out of control. That's a good indication. So write down what was going on, what triggered you. I can tell you the dog triggers me. But that's a whole other conversation. That's where I still lose my cool, but way less than I used to, because I've got some consciousness and know, this 9-month-old dog is not doing it on purpose, although you sometimes think they are, but they're not. Okay. So track it. What's going on? What are you feeling? Your emotions. And here's a key thing. If you ever want to go further with this work, this is mining for gold. Track the body feelings. What are the sensations when that event happened? Now, this does take some awareness, but with awareness, we can change anything. So just document this. So now, as you have practiced this self-awareness, you're going to be able to recognize blockers in other people. Now, sometimes, my friends, and I'm saying this with tough love, sometimes we think it's somebody else's blocker, but it's ours. We got triggered, but we're saying they got triggered and it's their blocker running. How would you know the difference? Well, fast track way to know the difference is clear your own blocker around the situation, and if you still get triggered, then it's them. If you still are watching them react to you in a negative, violent way, then it's them. Okay. Maybe did not mean to say if you get triggered, if you still have that situation. Let's just say that. Okay. So we talked about the pain body, which is like a supercharged, entitized ego, actually. And if you notice that things are escalating and you're having one of these conversations and you know either your blocker's activated or their blocker's activated and you're feeling unsafe in your body, it's quite possible that either you or the other person has their pain body has been activated. And I've had experiences that would probably be part of like a scary movie. And I will say one because I think this is relevant. So it was a friend, and I remember we would have these great, deep philosophical discussions, and I loved his mind. He was genius, brilliant. Well, in this particular conversation, I had come to my own insights about the subject, and I was so excited to share them. And all of a sudden, as I'm talking, I see his skin, like this gray pallor, just kind of like floated over him. I was like, whoa, how weird. And his voice was very calm, very measured. And then I started to feel like I couldn't breathe. It was so odd. It was like instant. So I walked out of the room and I'm choking a little bit. I don't have my breath. And he was sitting calmly in the room that I just walked out of. And I come back and say, I'm having trouble breathing. And he's just looking at me. So then I said, can you please reach out to our friend? Something's going on. And there was an energetic component, which I'd experienced over my lifetime many, many times. So I knew it wasn't a physical thing. I hadn't eaten anything. And it came immediately after I expressed my perceptions and views. Now, keep in mind, this particular person was a brilliant teacher, and he is used to being the one teaching and leading and guiding. And here I am having my own insights. So eventually I went over to the sofa and I sat in the corner and I meditated. I just completely shut out the outside world, and I could feel my breath coming back to normal. So with a pain body, they don't have to physically touch you. A pain body has an energetic power, but it doesn't have to impact you. If you're not reactive to the person, then that energy just floats past you. But obviously, I was reactive to this person. So pain bodies are not something to mess with. Best thing to do is to get yourself out of the situation before it escalates. If you can't get out of the situation, switch topics. Another tip is compliment the person. It's got to be genuine. Say, hey, you know when you said that the other day, I was reflecting on that. That was really helpful. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for telling me about that. So be genuine in your complimenting. Guess what happens when you do that? You get the person out of their pain. They're now feeling good about themselves because a pain body is there just in pain and suffering. And when someone's in pain and suffering, they want others to feel it. And then that pain body feeds on the energy, the emotional energy that the other person gets into. So back to my little story, I was getting afraid. So the pain body was then getting energized and powered by my reaction. Eventually, when I disconnected from the conversation, I sat down, closed my eyes, and I meditated, then there was no impact at all. I got back to my center. Okay, so let's talk a little more about soothing the savage beast. If you're hearing a little bit of background noise, that's my distraction tool that I use for the dog. He's chewing on a little bone. So apologies if you hear that weird noise. But hey, it gives me a chance to have a moment in time to record this podcast. You have to do whatever you do when you got a puppy. Okay, soothing the savage beast. Now, this could mean in yourself when you're triggered. I highly recommend finding great music without words, putting on headphones, and just chilling out or meditating. Now, if you're dealing with somebody else's blockers, what could you do? Is there a particular music that you notice they like? That can often just cut the edge off and soothe people. It's very interesting, especially music that has no words, because a lot of music that has words, it's amping you up, whether it's, getting you into like an energized frenzy. Nothing wrong with music with words. I enjoy it. But if you're trying to soothe someone's blockers getting activated, you don't want any potential triggers. Maybe that song is when they first got married and they're remembering their first loved one. Well, are you going to want to do that? No. So music without words, and just put it on in the background. You don't have to say a word. Don't say, you're getting triggered here. I'm going to go put music on and this is going to calm you down. No, you're not going to get anywhere with that. Okay. So, and then the last one is disconnect. What do I mean by disconnect? Well, when there is a conversation going on, a situation where you've been triggered or somebody else is triggered, there is an energetic cord, like I talked about with the pain body, with my friend in that conversation. Our energies were connected and they were amping up, okay? So disconnect, and this is something I found very helpful. Now, when you put your arms across your chest, that usually triggers people. Well, they're shutting down to me. They're close to me.
You don't have to do that. Just clasp your hands and put them gently in front of your solar plexus, which is right under your kind of your rib cage, the top of your rib cage. Okay, not top. Sorry, it's kind of that soft little squidgy part where your ribs come together. Just clasp your hands and place them there, and you're just very comfortable. There's something about the solar plexus that it creates an energetic exchange and cord. I've tried this successfully many times, and it's brilliant. You might even try it now. Notice how you calm and you just relax. It's like that energy, instead of it coming into you, you're being shielded by it, by your hands here, and it's intentional. Your hands have power, which is why massage feels so good and Reiki feels so good. There's an energy and power. So if you put your hands there just over your solar plexus and just breathe, you can be in the middle of the conversation with the person and just do this, and they're probably not going to even notice it. Okay, so that's a disconnect. Another disconnect is to leave the room, like what I did when the Frank's pain body got activated. And I went over to the sofa. Sometimes I will go get a glass of water, make a cup of tea. So whatever it is, and you could say, oh, God, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the loo, and excuse yourself. When you get out of their energy field, you automatically disconnect. Okay. So I want to say one more thing, and then we're going to wrap up, is family members. This is where, it's tricky. Okay, say you're a child, you're now 40 years old, and you go to visit your family. Well, your mother or father, your brothers or sisters, they remember you as a young person, and they have a recall of who you were. It's rare that people keep up, really close contact with family members as they get older. So there could be gaps. There could be a year. There could be 5 years. And they don't see the growth. They don't see that maybe you've studied Ekhardt Tolle and read Power of Now. Or maybe they don't see that you've been doing Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations for years and you've really found your center and peacefulness. Or maybe they don't know that you've done the highest potential program and you've got this true self-awareness and you're tapped into your manifesting power. They've not been tracking you day to day. So they're meeting the old version of you. Funny story. I'll never forget this. So my father, unfortunately, has left his body and has passed. But my very first job was working at a burger place that also served souvlakis, Greek food. So it was Greek food and burgers. So I would bicycle there, bicycle back, and it was a stinky place. It was, food and all that. So when I get home, I would smell, and my shoes would smell. Not quite to the day my father left his body, but I remember years and years of him saying, gosh, she had such stinky shoes. I don't have stinky feet anymore. I don't think. I don't have stinky shoes, but he remembered that 15-year-old girl. So remember this story when your family maybe brings up something and you're like, that's not who I am anymore. Just know that's their blueprint. That's their strong emotional connection experience with you, but it's not who you are. So what do? Same things I suggested before. Switch topics, complement them, disconnect energy, go for a glass of water, a cup of tea, go to the loo. When you start putting your attention on them and asking questions, that can also shift things. So just cut the energy cord and get off the topic. And please, my friends, if you get triggered when someone talks about your stinky shoes, you got some work to do. Clear the blocker. I didn't get upset with my father. It was just like I would tilt my head like this perplexed dog. Really, Dad? That's what you remember about me? All right. So as we start to wrap up, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review. It helps me so much to bring more content out, and it helps other people know about this work. I'd like you to remember, as you confirm yourself, it frees you to be yourself. All right, so much love. Thanks for listening.